This article is going to be on a little lighter note than most. The more serious articles are going to be coming on out right after this one. We're going to be tackling creationism versus evolution, the role of science versus the role of faith, and, education in the United States. Pretty light topics, don't you think? So I want to do something lighter, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a review of the first two episodes of Doctor Who. Now, for those of you who don't know what Doctor Who is British science fiction. In addition to that, it is the longest running science fiction show in history. It's also the most successful science fiction show in television history. Now, the joys of the internet allow you to do many interesting things. One of which is you're able to watch, episodes of a show that might be airing in a foreign country well before they come on out in the United States. Which, hey, if they're posted on the internet, well, I'm gonna watch them. Now, Doctor Who, in order to be running for 29 years, you've got to be doing something right. It has actually enjoyed a revival under the control of Russell T Davies and David Tennant, but up until that point, really Doctor Who within the United States, unless you caught it on PBS, you never heard of it. I was introduced to Doctor Who at 11, watching it on PBS on a way too late time for an 11-year-old. It might explain a couple of things about me. For a long time, Doctor Who was one of those things that was used in, nerds' subculture, essentially, to outdo one another. I'm a Trekkie. Well, I'm a Warzy. I believe Han shot first. Well, I believe that Captain Picard is far superior to Captain Kirk. I've watched all 29 years of Doctor Who. There's no way to beat that. Congratulations. You are the king of the geeks. However, it is a significant and amazing portion of not only British popular culture, but of science fiction popular culture. Like I said, in order to be running for 29 years, you've got to be doing something right. And they ran the entire gambit from light humor, to horror, to historical, to hard science fiction, to soft science fiction. They've run the entire gambit, and the revival of Doctor Who has only increased its popularity. Doctor Who, for years, provided a staple of really good entertainment, and really suspenseful entertainment, especially considering the budgets that they were frankly working with, and the fact that this was a time when you did not have the CGI effects flying fast and furious. It asked the audience to A, use its imagination, and B, it unapologetically pointed out to the audience, listen, this is what we can produce, this is what we're trying to portray, and just go with it. That's wonderful considering the fact that far too often we have a culture where we like everything spelled out. Particularly in science fiction. In fact, I have friends of mine who are ardent science fiction fans who look at science fiction, and by the end of the series, if everything is not precisely explained the way that it should be explained, or there's not a concrete ending to the series, well, by God, everybody's got to go knucking futz. That is I don't like that, simply because of the fact that it limits imagination. Doctor Who always made the point of saying there is a much larger universe out there than what we are portraying. And I like that. I like that they don't have to hit me over the head with 50,000 different little CGI effects to show how big or how wonderful it is. My imagination, I think, is enough. And whatever I produce in my imagination is going to be far superior to whatever you can put on the screen anyway. That being said, Doctor Who itself is a television show about an alien named the Doctor, who is a Time Lord. He is the master of time and space. He travels around the universe and around history, having adventures, righting wrongs, doing everything that he can do to also get himself into probably more trouble than he's worth. You get the very good sense with various doctors, and I do say various doctors because one of the wonderful gimmicks that they've used in Doctor Who is that since he is an alien, he can change his face and shape and certain core tenets of his personality when injured or when it suits him. It's a wonderful narrative device that they developed in the 29-year history to change the actors who portray the Doctor. Simply because of the fact that, well, originally the Doctor was a 60-plus-year-old man, and William Hartnell, the actor, just unfortunately had a horrible heart and was no longer able to continue with the program, however popular it was. So they developed a way of actually changing out the actor for another one. That has actually turned into a narrative device, and there are a lot of them in Doctor Who. The continuity of Doctor Who would make the keepers of the Memory Alpha Star Trek wiki drown in the saliva of their own nervous breakdowns. Well, the series has been essentially revamped under the guise of Russell T Davies, with the Doctor, for the most part, being portrayed by David Tennant. Now, I will go out on the limb and say right now that David Tennant, to me, portraying the Doctor, is a very mixed bag. On one hand, I appreciate what he's done. Him and Russell T Davies have revamped a series that no one ever really thought was going to ever seriously be revamped. And they did it in a way that was unique. Whereas most science fiction series that have left public consciousness or have left airing, most of them are revamped in a way in which they're, well, sexed up, for lack of a better term. Battlestar Galactica is a classic example of one that is positive. Another one that is not so positive could be viewed as The Bionic Woman. Now, to be fair, David Tennant sometimes does a wonderful Doctor, but just particularly within the last couple of series, David Tennant seemed to get stuck in a rut. He seemed to have only two modes of emoting for his Doctor, one of which is what I call the Ritalin-addled Doctor, in which he seems to suffer from some sort of childhood mania. Or you have Emo Doctor, in which he's depressed. In fact, you got the impression at one point that the Doctor was becoming, well, bipolar. David Tennant's Doctor, whereas there were aspects of that within previous performances, they were usually done with much greater subtlety and much more deftness. For instance, if you want a wonderful portrayal of the Doctor, Tom Baker or Sylvester McCoy, you always got the idea that behind the Doctor's exterior and what was in fact going on in the plot, that there was a much greater depth to what was going on behind the scenes, particularly within the Doctor's mind. Well, that being said, time to talk about the 11th hour, because the reason that this is a red letter point in Doctor Who is that two things. First of all, there is a new Doctor, Matthew Smith. Also, there's a new companion and a completely new production team headed up by Stephen Moffat, who did some of the best episodes of Doctor Who in the revamped series, including The Empty Child. If you have not seen a single episode of Doctor Who, and you'd love to see one that is frankly wonderful science fiction, creepy as hell, and just well written, watch The Empty Child. It is a wonderful, wonderful story. That being said, in part 2 we will go into the 11th hour, the first episode of the new series.